Now, President Trump announced earlier this week that the U.S. would reinstate a naval blockade on Iranian ports. So let's get the very latest on what's happening in the Middle East with the Center Square's Washington, D.C. bureau chief. We're very privileged to be joined by Sarah Roderick-Fitch. Sarah, thank you for taking a few minutes of your very busy time. And I know you have a new update today at thecentersquare.com on the very latest military action in Iran, while the Iranians, it appears, have attacked commercial ships. What can you tell us that's the very latest on this story?
Yes, they are continuing attacking. They don't seem to be backing down from attacking these commercial ships in the Strait of Hormuz. From different accounts coming from the Iranians maintain that the Strait of Hormuz is closed. However, the United States is saying it's open, and the U.S. is enforcing a blockade that it reinstated after being removed in June following the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding. Now, this blockade, it's pretty costly, and that was one of the big points for the Iranian economy. The Trump administration estimates it costs the Iranian economy somewhere between $400 and $500 million a day, which is pretty significant, meaning that they've got to pay for these weapons. They have to pay the IRGC members, all these people. And really the idea is to sort of choke the Iranian regime and trying to bring them to the table. But it doesn't seem to be the president saying, okay, they've called him up, they're wanting to make a deal. At the same time, he's saying they're lying. They've shown sort of a two-faced sort of way of doing things back and forth. And so it's really interesting where things are going. But it looks like the president is just frustrated with what is happening with Iran. He has given them so much opportunity. He's talked about that. He said he's accused them of lying and going back on some of their words, especially like the MOU that had been one of the big things with the MOU, in fact, was that the Iranians had to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And obviously that is not happening. So that's why we're here. And these strikes, and there was another one early in the morning. So this is unusual because usually the U.S. lately in the past week has been striking in the evenings. But this shows really sort of like, is this signaling, full on military operations, sort of returning to that that April, between January and April, that whole, February. I was thinking of Venezuela. February, the end of February. Really, there was about 6 weeks there. So is this returning to that? And it kind of looks like it is going in that direction.
And the president said, and of course you've been there in the White House to not only, so you've been seeing his reaction, you can see what's on his face, you've been covering him long enough to know beyond the words. And so now he said earlier this week that the U.S. would be the guardian of the Strait of Hormuz and could impose a fee on cargo transiting that waterway. What's the latest on that potential fee, or could that happen if the U.S. were to have control there?
Well, he appears to be backing down from that. Yesterday, he hosted the Iraqi prime minister in the Oval Office, and he kind of backed down from that, saying that there was a lot of pushback from some of the countries in the region. And so he said that basically what he was planning on doing was, I guess, some of these countries, and he was meaning, I think, more like some of these Gulf neighbors that are there, UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, some of those countries that really are obviously relying on the Strait of Hormuz, have offered investments in the United States. So as some way to give back, I guess, to taxpayers. And so there really hasn't, other than the president saying that, there really hasn't been a whole lot of details as far as those deals go, but he's just saying that is what they're going to do. So he's sort of backing off from that idea. Of course, it has been said, hey, there's not going to be any fees, going through. But obviously the taxpayers, the American taxpayers, are paying, could be paying a lot of money for these military operations to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. Especially these latest rounds of strikes have been really sort of focusing on those coastal areas. There's missile sites, drone sites, all those places that are targeting ships within the Strait of Hormuz.
And we're talking to Sarah Roderick-Fitch, the Washington, D.C. bureau chief for the Center Square, covering the White House, the federal government activities, the president, and we're talking about what's happening in Iran, but also, as you've covered, the story regarding Iraq. And I think a number of Americans thought, wait a minute, that war ended, but there were still U.S. military operations in Iraq. And Sarah, we're going to hear from the president first, but let's hear what the president had to say after he and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth met with the Iraqi prime minister this week and announced the end of American operations in Iraq. This is President Donald Trump.
Well, we don't think we need the military there anymore. It's a very a big operation. And what we do have is the oil companies are all going in now, and they're doing partnerships with Iraq, and they're getting along very well. The relationship is a whole big relationship where we don't need the military there. We're there to help them. We're there to protect them if need be. But we don't think that's going to be necessary. And their primary, I consider an opponent. They might have considered a friend, but I consider that an opponent was Iran, was a big burden on Iraq because they were the bully of the Middle East, as you know. And we were just talking about that. But they're not going to have that problem anymore because Iran has been very much destabilized, and really their military powers just a tiny fraction of what it was just 4 months ago. So they're not going to have that problem. I think it's really, in a sense, it's given them freedom to do what they have to do. And I think that's one of the reasons that our oil companies are going in there at levels that have never been seen before.
So that's the president with the Iraqi prime minister. And Sarah, the president seemed to suggest that, although the as you mentioned, the taxpayer bill for Iran is rising, there could potentially be some economic benefit finally coming out of Iraq if, as he says, the oil companies are going in there like never before.
Yes, we'll see about that. One of the things I think was interesting was I was not there at the meeting at the White House, and I attended the meeting. I was in there with remarks at the Pentagon with Secretary Hegseth and the Prime Minister. And I think what was interesting, what is not really been talked about, yes, they're talking about the oil, is sort of, there's more possibility there. But also I think is sort of the shift really is what the president was really trying to get at. And I think that Secretary Hegseth really, he clearly laid out at the Pentagon was basically this operation that was ongoing in Iraq. People often think of going back to the early 2000s when we were first there. This was more based on, this was the fight against ISIS that was going on in Syria and Iraq. So this has been really happening since 2014, and pulling out of there. And what Secretary Hegseth said was that the U.S., they're done with operations in Iraq, but they want to shift the focus to Iran and its proxies. So we're talking Hamas, Hezbollah, was the number ones, Houthis, those organizations, those other organizations throughout the Middle East, and what they're doing. So it'd be really, I think it's going to be an interesting thing to see how this shift happens. Does this mean where those troops that are stationed currently in Iraq, where will they be going? Will there be shifts at other bases in the Middle East? Does that open the door for ground operations? The president has mentioned the possibility he will not rule out taking over Karg Island, which is a huge point. That's where the Iranian oil, that's where most of their oil and stuff like that's their huge port there. It is very strategic for them. And it's sort of seen, I guess you could say, as maybe the Iwo Jima of this conflict at this point. So it'll be really interesting to see if that's kind of what they're sort of transitioning. But really, it's closing one door, opening another door at this point. But that's what it signifies.
And Sarah, you're not going to be any less busy because with these strikes now happening at different times of day, it's like you're on the clock all the time, isn't it? So there's probably no break for you anytime soon, is there?
No. But it's very interesting to watch. It'll be interesting to see if these talks resume. There might be another ceasefire. We'll see how long that lasts. And it's just interesting what the president has said in the past. He's called them liars. Will it be different this time? We'll see.
And the president is scheduled to address the nation Thursday night. But are we expecting anything on the Iran front, or is this going to be more focused on elections, or do we know? I guess you never really know. But what are you hearing?
He is saying he won't be. He's not telling us. He's only disclosing a little bit. Definitely, elections are part of that. I think part of the push to get the SAVE Act is a big part of that. But I think that there could be some portions in there about Iran. I can't help but think that there won't be. But yeah, he's being very tight-lipped. He has indicated a little bit. He said there's going to be a very large announcement. We don't know what that is. We just do know that there's going to be elections talked about. It's 9 p.m., which is prime time for the country. So it would be certain. It wouldn't be unusual for him to bring up the latest sort of Iranian conflict. This is an opportunity to update Americans on what is happening over there, especially if he is planning to sort of really ramp up these operations and give them a rundown, just kind of like his past address, and really sort of to address the nation on the economic status, gas prices, energy prices, all of that, which is hurting Americans at the pumps. So this would be an excellent opportunity, I think, really to sort of make his case, especially as we're sort of we're coming into the midterm season here, because in August, that's when Congress, they recess. And many of them are hitting the campaign trails, as I'm sure the president will be doing the same. There's a lot of state fairs going on. It's a great opportunity. So here's a great opportunity before they leave to make that sort of that push and sort of make that case with the American people on the SAVE Act, possibly the Iranian conflict, anything else that the president has on his agenda, really.
Sarah, I know you'll be keeping us posted on all of that at thecentersquare.com. Thank you for your award-winning coverage, and thank you for joining us and sharing some of your busy time. And I know it's getting busier with the president's speech and, of course, everything going on overseas. Sarah Roderick-Fitch, the Washington, D.C. bureau chief for the Center Square, joining us here on the States. I'm Jim Talamonti, in for Greg Bishop.